What's up, you glorious bastards? Back for another deep dive, and today we're tackling something truly wild.
Wild's an understatement.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the Haka, right? The dance those badass All Blacks rugby dudes do before they pulverize the competition.
Right, but it's more than just...
Yeah, I know everyone thinks it's some war dance, but like, there's got to be more to it than meets the eye, am I right?
Totally.
Uh,
It's a lot deeper than people realize, and it's not just about war at all.
so let's cut the crap then.
Yeah.
What is the Haka all about? If it's not just for battle, then what the hell is it for?
Well, it's really rooted in Maori culture. It's like their way of expressing all sorts of things through movement, chanting, facial expressions.
Feels like a whole toolbox of emotions and stuff.
Pretty much, yeah.
You could say that.
So they're using it for like everything. Welcoming guests 1 minute, then mourning the dead the next.
Yeah, pretty much. There are different types of haka for different occasions. So, for example, you've got the haka pashuri, which is specifically for welcoming guests.
Makes sense. Then there's the waiata tangi, which is performed at funerals and during mourning.
Okay, so like happy haka and sad haka.
Exactly. And there are even haka for giving advice.
Wait, what? Haka for giving advice? That's wild.
Yeah, it is. And for restoring self-respect, and even for transmitting social and political messages.
So basically, it's like their Swiss Army knife for communication.
That's a good way to put it. It's incredibly versatile. It's all about conveying powerful emotions and messages through movement and sound.
I'm trying to picture it.
Yeah.
Like some old Maori dude stomping his feet and giving life advice while bulging his eyes.
Haha, it's not quite like that, but you're getting the idea. The haka is about channeling that raw energy and emotion.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So where the hell did this whole haka thing even come from? Like, who woke up one day and decided, hey, let's make a dance where we act like total badasses?
Well, the origin story is actually pretty fascinating.
Go on, I'm all ears.
So, according to Maori tradition, the haka represents a natural phenomenon.
What? They didn't just invent it.
Yep. The story goes that the sun god Tamanuitara had this summer wife named Haina Ramati.
Okay.
And her presence on those scorching hot days was marked by a shimmering in the air. Like heat haze, you know?
Yeah, I can picture that.
Well, that shimmering, that's the origin of the haka. It's the dance of the god's sun, Tanaror.
Hold on, so you're telling me the quivering air on a hot day inspired one of the most intense dance forms on the planet?
Yeah. It's pretty wild, right?
That's definitely not what I was expecting. But it's kind of beautiful in a way. The Maori connecting a dance to nature like that.
It speaks to their worldview where the natural world is deeply intertwined with human experience.
All right, I'm digging this. But let's get real for a second.
Yeah.
When I see a haka, the first thing that grabs me is the facial expressions. Those dudes are intense. It's like they're trying to stare into your soul and rip it out.
Absolutely. The facial expressions are crucial. It's all part of the performance.
Bulging eyes, tongues flying out. It's not your grandma's waltz, that's for sure.
It's definitely meant to make an impact. And it did. Back in the day when European explorers first encountered the haka, they were terrified.
No kidding. I bet those pasty white dudes had never seen anything like it before. They probably thought they'd stumbled into some demonic ritual.
Oh, they weren't far off. I mean, imagine you're a European sailor in the 18th century, right? You land on this foreign shore and you're greeted by a bunch of Maori warriors performing this intense rhythmic dance with these crazy facial expressions.
They must have been shitting their pants.
Probably. And it wasn't just the movements. Each facial expression has a specific meaning. It adds another layer of intensity.
Like what kind of meanings?
Well, there's the pukana where they widen their eyes and show the whites. That's meant to challenge and intimidate.
And the whole tongue thing, right? The wetero?
Yeah, exactly. And that's only done by men. It's seen as a display of strength and defiance.
You know, it's funny how those early Europeans were terrified by the haka. But later on, it became like an accepted part of welcoming ceremonies, even for British royalty.
It is kind of ironic, isn't it? Like they went from being scared shitless to welcoming dignitaries with the same dance.
So what happened? Did the haka get toned down or something?
Not really.
Yeah.
The missionaries who came to New Zealand in the 19th century tried to wipe it out. They saw it as pagan and unchristian. They wanted to replace it with hymns and European-style singing.
Talk about a buzzkill.
Yeah.
Those uptight bastards really tried to crush the Maori spirit.
They did, but they ultimately failed. The haka was too powerful to be suppressed.
It's like a weed. It just keeps coming back stronger.
Exactly. And eventually it started being used to welcome important figures, maybe as a way of showing respect, or maybe as a way of asserting Maori identity.
So from demonic war dance to royal welcome mat, that's quite a journey for a dance.
It is, and the journey continues. Today, the haka has evolved even further. It's performed by men, women, and children. It's not just about intimidation and aggression anymore. It's a symbol of Maori identity and pride, a celebration of their culture.
I read that doing the haka before international sporting events actually started way back in 1888 with a New Zealand native football team.
Really? Didn't know that.
Yeah, they were touring the world and decided to perform a haka before their matches. It must have been a hit because it caught on, and by 1905, the All Blacks were doing it too.
Wow, so the tradition has been around for over a century.
That's pretty amazing to think about, a tradition that's lasted so long. And now it's this iconic pregame ritual that's famous worldwide. Speaking of the All Blacks, they always perform the same haka, right? Kapakai.
Yeah, that's the one. But there's actually been some controversy surrounding it.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing something about that. What was it again?
Well, the Ngati Toa tribe, the tribe of the guy who originally composed Kamate, argued that they owned the rights to it. And they weren't happy with how it was being used and commercialized.
So they felt like their cultural heritage was being exploited.
Exactly. They felt like they were being robbed.
Did they win their case?
They did. In 2012, a deed of settlement was signed recognizing the Ngati Toa's ownership of Kamat.
Good for them. They stood up for what was right.
Absolutely. It was a major step in protecting Maori cultural property.
This haka thing is way deeper than I ever imagined. It's not just a dance. It's a statement of identity, a legal battleground, a window into history. It's mind-blowing.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore. Like the spread of the haka to other countries, the controversies surrounding its use, the debate about cultural appropriation.
Yeah, we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do. But before we get into all that, I want to tell you about something really interesting. You know how we talked about the missionaries trying to kill off the haka?
Yeah, those guys were real assholes.
Well, it turns out they might have actually helped spread it.
Wait, what? How is that even possible?
It's a pretty crazy story. Let me tell you all about it. So these missionaries, they were so obsessed with stamping out the haka, you know?
Yeah, they were pretty uptight.
But they didn't realize they were actually helping to spread it.
Hold up, how the hell does that even work?
Well, they banned all the traditional Maori practices in their schools and missions, right?
Trying to force their beliefs on everyone.
Exactly. But then they started having these big gatherings and events, you know?
Like what?
Like church services and school functions, and they needed a way to welcome all the bigwigs.
And they couldn't resist the haka.
Well, they couldn't exactly bring in a brass band or have a choir sing hymns, could they?
I guess not.
So they turned to the haka. The irony is just too perfect.
Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. They thought they were destroying Maori culture, but they accidentally gave the haka a new platform.
It's like they created this whole new audience for it.
And then it just kept snowballing from there.
Right, totally. It became a thing to use the haka to welcome important visitors. It was like this exotic display of Maori culture.
I bet Queen Victoria nearly shit herself when she saw a bunch of Maori warriors doing the haka.
I can only imagine. It's wild to think the same dance that scared the crap out of those early explorers ended up being performed for royalty.
So what is it about the haka that makes it so damn captivating?
Well, it's powerful, right? It's raw. It's like primal energy being unleashed. It's hard to look away.
Yeah, it's like watching a car crash. You know,
Exactly. It's this mix of awe and terror.
and it just keeps evolving.
Exactly. The haka is alive. It's constantly changing. It's not just stuck in the past.
So it's not just some dusty old tradition.
No, it's being reinterpreted and reinvented all the time. You see it popping up in all sorts of unexpected places now.
Like where?
Like flash mobs, protests, even corporate events.
Wait, corporate events? Are you serious?
That's serious.
I'm trying to picture some CEO in a suit doing the haka during a board meeting.
Haha. It's probably not the most authentic use of the haka, but it just shows how far it's reached.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It's cool to see the haka getting recognition, but you don't want it to become some meaningless gimmick.
Exactly. It's all about respect. You have to understand the meaning behind it, the history, the significance.
I feel like the haka is becoming more political these days, too.
Oh, for sure. It's always been a way for Maori people to express their identity and resistance. But it's definitely taken on a new urgency in recent years.
Yeah, you see it being used in protests against land rights, violations, environmental destruction, all sorts of things.
It's a powerful way to make their voices heard.
It's like a war cry for the 21st century.
Exactly. It's saying, we're still here, we're not going anywhere.
So what's the takeaway here? What do we want our listeners to understand about the haka?
It's simple. The haka is more than just a dance. It's a living, breathing expression of Maori culture. It's their connection to their ancestors, their land, their identity.
Like a story told with their bodies.
Exactly. It's a war cry, a celebration, a challenge. It's everything.
It's a big fuck you to anyone who tries to erase their culture.
Exactly. So next time you see a haka, don't just see the movements and the expressions. Feel the history, the passion, the power.
And don't even think about stealing it for your TikTok video.
Seriously, it's not yours to take. It's a sacred part of Maori culture.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Any other Haka wisdom you want to drop on us before we wrap things up?
Well, there's one more thing, and this is where things get really interesting. We've talked about the Haka's past, right? Its origins, its evolution, its controversies.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
But what about its future? What's next for the Haka in a world that's constantly changing?
What's in store for the Haka? Are we going to see it on Dancing with the Stars anytime soon?
Haha, I doubt it. But seriously, predicting the future is tough, but I think the Haka is here to stay. It's so deeply ingrained in Maori culture, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, they're not going to let it just fade away.
Right, exactly. They're fighting to keep it alive and relevant.
But the world's changing. So how does the Haka adapt to that?
That's the million-dollar question. There's this constant push and pull between preserving tradition and allowing for innovation.
So it's like a balancing act.
Yeah, you don't want to stifle creativity, but you also don't want to lose the essence of what makes the Haka so special.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. So how is the Haka actually evolving? What are some of the ways it's changing?
Well, for one thing, it's not confined to traditional settings anymore.
What do you mean?
It's breaking free from the marae and the rugby field.
So where are we seeing it?
Everywhere. Flash mobs, protests, even corporate events.
Hold on, corporate events. Are you telling me some CEO is out there doing the Haka to motivate his employees?
It's happening. Whether it's done tastefully or not is another question.
Yeah, that's kind of cringy. But it shows you how much the Haka has permeated mainstream culture.
It's a double-edged sword, for sure. On the one hand, it's great that the Haka is getting recognition, but on the other hand, you don't want it to become trivialized.
It all comes back to respect, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People need to understand the history, the meaning, the significance of the Haka. If you're going to use it, you better damn well know what you're doing.
It's not just some cool dance move.
It's a sacred tradition.
And it seems like the Haka is becoming increasingly political.
Oh, absolutely. It's always been a powerful way for Maori people to express their identity and resistance, but it's taken on even greater significance in recent years with the rise of indigenous rights movements.
Yeah, you see it being used in all sorts of protests now.
It's a way for Maori people to reclaim their power, to make their voices heard.
It's like a battle cry for the modern age.
Exactly. They're saying, we're still here and we're not backing down.
So where do we go from here? What's the future of the Haka?
It's at a crossroads, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to continue evolving, adapting, being reinterpreted by each new generation.
So it's a living thing.
It is. But the core values, the spirit, the raw emotion, that's what makes the Haka so unique. That will never die.
It's more than just a dance. It's a story, a history, a culture, a way of life.
It's all of that and more.
Well, there you have it, folks. The Haka. It's a dance, a history, a battle cry, a story that's still being written.
And it's a story that deserves to be heard.
We hope you learned a thing or two today.
Right.
And remember, next time you see a Haka, don't just watch it, feel it.
Let it move you. Let it challenge you. Let it inspire you.
Stay curious, you magnificent beasts. And until next time, keep diving deep.